It's the Black Aaron broadcast. It's the Black Aaron podcast. It's the Black Aaron broadcast. Welcome to the Black Aaron broadcast. This is episode 22, I think. I'm here with a great guest. Awesome man. I'm going to give him a short little intro. So, this guy he's an accomplished musician. I believe you play guitar and bass.
Bass, piano, a little bit of your basic instruments. Nothing that could consider myself an actual bass player or piano player. I'd say I was a guitar player, but I fiddle with everything.
Okay. He's also an audio engineer here at campus. He is you recently got your master's. He recently got his master's. He's an educated gentleman here. He's played in bands like almost your whole life.
Since teenage, which is a pretty damn long time ago.
Yeah, his whole aura reeks of like the 90s. I don't know, I always think of Sublime when I see this guy. This is Professor Joshua McKendry.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome to the show, man. Thank you for making some time in your busy schedule to come on.
My pleasure.
Just chat about music.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I want to ask you, how's your day?
Wonderful. You know, I mean, Mondays, Wednesdays, I'm here all day.
Yeah.
And there's really no place besides home with my wife. There's no place I'd rather be than in the studio all day.
Yeah.
And being here teaching and especially the lab classes, which are the end of the day for me, and then the Friday lab, right?
Yeah.
Friday lab. So, those are for me, I wouldn't wish to be anywhere else. I love, being traveling, being all kinds of crazy places, but on a daily basis, there's nowhere I'd rather be than here and in the studio. So,
yeah.
It's been a good day.
That's good, man. Dude, and you recently got married, was it last year?
So our 1 year anniversary is coming up. We're going to Vermont.
What are you going to do in Vermont, man?
We're just going to hang out. We got this beautiful big cabin. We got married in Hawaii, and we got married on Kauai. Then we went to Molokai, and we went to Maui and spent a bunch of time in Hana. And so we're going for the other side of the universe in reference to weather. So we're going to Vermont. We got a cabin out in the middle of the woods, and we're going to cruise, Vermont and Massachusetts and New York and whatnot. Yeah.
But you're originally from San Diego?
San Clemente. So San Clemente is the border town of San Diego County and the edge of Orange County.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up in San Clemente?
It was killer. I mean, and I've been there. I'm 46, and I've lived there 44 years. The only other place I've ever lived was Santa Cruz. I lived in Santa Cruz for a couple of years when I was 19, 20. I tried to run away from my problems, and it didn't work. Little did I know there's problems in Santa Cruz too.
Yeah, they'll follow. Those demons will follow you wherever you go, man.
Yeah, and San Clemente is a beautiful town. I mean, it's hard to even really explain. It's really like no other place in Orange County, Southern California, in a lot of ways. It's a beach town, but it's lots of hills. And for many years, when I was growing up, all through the 70s and 80s, it was really small. Yeah. I mean, 25, 30,000. Now I don't even know. So over 100,000. But, it was a really small town, and I loved it. I still love it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I love being there, but growing up was a really, really cool place to grow up. Beach. I mean, the high school's, a mile from the beach.
Damn. Yeah. That's kind of like Huntington Beach. Yeah. So they have they have a high school that's a mile from the beach. Mm-hmm. Now, when did you start getting into, because I kind of want to start earlier, what are your earliest memories, I guess, of music? Was that in San Diego, San Clemente, or?
Well, it's funny, I was talking to my wife about that a little bit last night, and for me, there's been several times where music really hit me hard. Yeah. But my earliest, my mom took me to see Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Dude!
I saw all kinds of crazy shows and stuff when I was a little kid, because my grandfather was in the newspaper business, and so I just went.
Press passes.
Press passes, exactly. Wow. So I went to all kinds of stuff. grew up going to ballets and musicals, and I was always around.
He was covering all.
He was covering all that stuff. Yeah. Sport, I mean, everything, but music from a musical angle, it was just all across the map.
So you were introduced to a lot of
cool stuff. Yeah, and so, but I remember, I was thinking last night, and I remember being around 8 years old, and I had, mid-70s, early 80s, your home stereo system was a giant piece of furniture, right? So you had this giant piece of furniture, and then inside of that furniture, I had an 8-track player, right, and then record player on top, and I mean, really, this whole piece of furniture, you had like this much audio component, you know. Anyways, I had records. I had at that time, I had the Foreigner 4 record, the Sex Pistols, AC/DC Dirty Deeds, and the Police Ghost in the Machine. And like I listened to those records, wore them out.
Is that where they got that Ghost in the Machine thing, or for the Police?
Well, I mean,
use that title.
That's a thing, I mean, they probably took the title from it being a thing, but
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and then like when I was probably 12, 13, I had an uncle who was just crazy. I was kind of raised by my uncles, and I had an uncle that was crazy into music. He lived in New York City in a brownstone, and he had like one whole room that was just records and vinyls and all kinds of stuff. So he would send me tapes, and I was a little kid, lived at my grandma's, and I was probably 11, 12, 13, and he'd send me these cassette tapes that were like, one side would be Led Zeppelin 3, the other side would be Bob Marley, another tape would be like Toots and the Maytals, and then on the other side of that would be the Stones' Exile on Main Street. And I just had
holy crap,
every couple months he would send me 3, 4 tapes from the vinyls, and so that was kind of like really where, I mean, I think music took off for me 12, 13, 14, and getting all those tapes. And that's kind of a time where you, for me, and what I see for a lot of people, that like musically you move away from maybe what people give you, and you're able to get for yourself and choose for yourself.
Branch out.
Yeah, branch out.
You're kind of forming your own ideas and opinions and tastes, and not only music, other things in life.
Absolutely. It's a time of growth and of experimentation, and music, of course, depending on who you are, but music for me played a huge part in that.
Damn. So you were super fortunate as far as having the granddad that was in the new stuff, to get to all the stuff, and then even your uncle in New York taking vinyl, putting it on. That process, the equipment, even back then, must have been kind of had to be a hell of a process for him. And
it probably, I mean, really, that stuff probably sounded better than stuff sounds today. Now, cassette was a terrible medium. The noise floor was horrible, but he probably had great vinyl players. And through that time too, 2 of my uncles went to USC, and they played in the SC band, and I used to at the Coliseum at the end of games, at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I would jump it used to just be a little cement wall, and the Trojan band would be playing back at the fans like they do, and I'd run out and I'd stand with my uncles, and they played tuba. There's a picture from an old USC catalog, and it's like my uncle walking with his hand down with the big old tuba, and there's this little kid, he's holding this little kid's hand, that's me, like walking. I'd walk with the band, and I can remember that so well, just walking across Exposition and hearing the drums, ba-da-da, 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 echoing down the street.
So that kind of brings me to, you were definitely deep within Southern California music kind of, culture, because, I mean, you got the band there, the different, but also you're going to different shows and different entertainment and stuff. When did you have your first band, and what was that band called? What did you guys play?
I think the first legit band I was in was probably 17, 18, and it was a band called there were a couple bands before, but it was just mess around. But the first legit band was Jesus Chrysler. And I mean, that's a great name. Isn't that a great name? And it's stolen, like every great piece of art is stolen. It's from a Frank Miller comic book called Hard Boiled, and the front of this comic book is a 4-part comic book.
That's the same guy that did Sin City?
Yeah.
Frank Miller?
Okay. Yeah, and crazy stuff, It was this car crashing into a bunch of people or something, and it was like a 57 Chrysler, but where it says Chrysler on the back, it said Jesus Chrysler, so we snatched the name. And it's funny because there's other bands out there, like if you Google Jesus Chrysler, there's there's a few that have a similar name, but that band was legit. I mean, from 17 through maybe 22, I played in that band, and we played I was talking to you earlier that we played with Sublime and Fishbone and a lot of I was kind of at that time that was late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of an Orange County scene. The Offspring came out at that time.
Yeah, there was a lot
Social
of
Distortion and No Doubt. And they all kind of came out of that thing. And we were like hovering down below. We used to play the Roxy and the Whiskey and all that kind of stuff. So
you were playing within some of the same circuits as some of those bands?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And there's a band called the Voodoo Glow Skulls. Which,
I remember was that ska?
Yeah, they were very much a ska band, but like their sound is what kind of No Doubt and took and rode with. Kind of like how we were talking about Fishbone and the Voodoo Glow Skulls. And the Glow Skulls still play, 40 years later. But, they never really made it past a certain plateau. But, it was a cool time to be playing music in Orange, LA County, playing rock and roll, I guess, There was a lot of bands that sort of blew up out of that era. And we were like, we played with a lot of those bands. And we would always self-destruct, like a lot of bands do.
Yeah.
But, there was,
creative differences?
No, like, just bad, kids getting in trouble and just not being straight. I mean... Taylor Hawkins, he's the drummer for the Foo-Fighters.
Okay.
And he was in our band for a while. He's from Laguna Beach, which is like, San Clemente is...
Was that the first drummer or the second one?
In the Chrysler band? Or in the Foo-Fighters?
In the Foo-Fighters.
He's been the drummer ever since... So, in the beginning of the Foo-Fighters, it was Dave Grohl. You know what I mean? Like, he did everything. And then, once he brought in a drummer, it's been Taylor ever since.
Because I was watching the thing and like... They were recording an album, and they had one guy. Is when the band was flying in and doing parts, and eventually one of the drummers, I think, just wasn't.
I'm not sure. You've seen Sound City, right?
I think that's what I was watching.
The blonde dude who they show playing, that's always that's Taylor.
Because I feel like there was somebody before.
No,
briefly, maybe even.
It's possible. I don't know. Exactly.
Maybe it was another band. Like maybe they had. Because he was in a few bands, wasn't he?
Taylor. Yeah, he was in a band called Faster Pussycat. He played for Alanis Morissette. And so anyways,
Go ahead,
he played in our band, and we played a show, and he was incredible. And I used to make fun of him because every weekend he'd be coming up to LA like trying out for bands, and I was like, "You're a sellout." I had no clue, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was 20 years old, and I thought if you're in a band, it's like that's your family and
forever.
And forever, exactly. And anyways, he eventually we played a show, and it was a nightmare, and we just didn't play well, and probably wasted and just beyond what you should be to try to do that kind of stuff. And he's like, okay, I'll see you guys, Tuesday at practice. And the next time I saw him, he was on MTV like 2 years later, playing with Alanis Morissette for the MTV Music Awards. And now, he's a superstar. So, it was cool. I mean, there was a lot of people that, the singer from that band, a guy named Joshua Paskowitz that, was in that band with me. Yeah. He ended up he was in a band called The Flies, and they had a couple years of
I remember The Flies. Yeah. They did a song for Disturbing Behavior.
Yeah, Got You Where I Want You.
Got You Where I Want You. Yeah, I remember that.
That singer was the singer for my band for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, it was one of those things where it's like, you're kind of close, but yet not really. I mean, we never had a record deal. But it was a great band. I mean, I still have a lot of the recordings. We worked, we did probably 20, 25 recordings. And back then, too, it was like some stuff was studio stuff, some stuff was to cassette, meaning like 8, 12 track. Because, I mean, rather than having a laptop and a DAW, it was like big, 12 track to cassette. And so we did a lot of recording, and it was cool. I mean, I lived for it, and I loved it. And it was a great training ground for me because... it's one of those things where as I started to get into audio engineering, I got to go, that's how I got in. I went back to studios where once I was like, I want to do this, and I went to studios where I had played.
You used to play.
And they knew me, and lots of no's. And then, eventually...
Oh, yeah, we remember you guys.
Yeah, we remember you. Then you touched the console. But I mean, to be honest with you, I was always like from, and now that you've been around recording people, like bands sometimes come in like, oh, I want to be there the whole way. They listen to somebody getting a kick drum sound or a snare drum sound for 20 minutes and like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I was the kind of thing where I always wanted to be there. Back then when you mixed, you had to, there's no automation, so you'd put tape along all the faders, and usually the mixing engineer and at least 1 or 2 band members would have to be there to move the faders, when you did your mix down. and I always wanted to be there for that. I'd be there at the very end. So from that time, I knew I wanted to be in the studio. I didn't know I was going to end up being an engineer, but I knew I wanted to be there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What are I asked this question of one of our other professors, Caesar, because I posted on the we have like a FB group page. All the students are on the Success Club, and I was like, what questions should I ask them? And one of the questions was, what do you consider like success in in a music career? Is it just selling a lot of records, or is it something else, like something?
So you mean like personal success for me?
Yeah, what has
or
been
like
your
success out in sort of
probably like what has been your greatest, you feel your greatest success as far as
well, it's I mean that's an interesting one because I find myself in a funny place quite often because for me like what's happened to the record business is it's fallen on its face, right? And a lot of the record business has died and all these things. And what I was just talking about, like being in the early 80s or late 80s, early 90s, if you didn't have a record deal, you didn't get played outside your hometown.
Yeah.
Where now we could do a little song right now, have it up on SoundCloud and play it in China, in an hour from now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, what is like success? I mean, for me, being able to make my living playing music and recording music and being around music is absolutely the greatest thing ever.
That's
like
it,
when I was younger, it was like, I wanted to be a rock star and like do whatever, but once I got into the recording industry and started to make records, a lot of the stuff that I did for about 10 years, did a lot of stuff. It was not the kind of stuff that was in popular music, and I was happy as heck to do it, and so like for me, success in this industry is being able to make a living, be happy, and be part of it. You know what I mean?
Be part of what's going on in the scene of contributing to the music community then.
Absolutely. And being around musical people, it's just the greatest thing ever. I love being around talented people, and as an engineer and a music producer, that's a huge part of the deal is being around talented people and pulling yourself back and trying to facilitate their ability. And I dig that. That's a really big deal to me. And as far as being parts of big records and working at big studios, and that stuff's cool. But I like a lot of the stuff that I've gotten to do around it. You know what I mean? Like, I worked at Monterey Jazz Festival a few times and just had unreal experiences. Some of them that weren't even, necessarily music centric. Just where I got to be because I was part of the thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, a lot of that stuff where it's just being around it, being around music creation is that's success to me. And being able to survive off it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I never wanted to own, a big studio. Once I got in and was able to do it, I just wanted to make enough to survive and be part of the music scene and be around talented people.
Do you like teaching more or like being in the studio or?
I would say right now that if I was offered an everyday studio gig and making, let's say, the same amount of money I make teaching or more, or like a little bit more, I would stay a teacher. I love teaching, and the studio business it's gnarly. You know what I mean? Like I went through a period where I was doing a lot of, I'd say a 10-year stretch where, it's 6 days a week, 12, 14, 16 hours a day is the norm, and it's like when you're in it, it's just the greatest thing ever, but I don't think I have the stomach for it now, I still do recording, I still do my own stuff, I still work for people when need be. I do a lot of side work. I work for Yamaha a lot, so I did a lot of live stuff over the summer for some unbelievable jazz players, live recording for a Yamaha division. So, I still work. I still work as an engineer, but the teaching gig is just so cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love it.
That's what's up, because that's why part of the reason I want to do this. There's a lot of reasons I want to do these interviews, but also because you guys are teaching potentially the future generation of music and sound. Mm-hmm. More than likely, somebody or a few people in here are gonna go on to. Everybody's gonna do something, but some people are probably never gonna let go and go on to do great.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
And you said that you talked to Caesar, and Caesar's been doing this longer than I have, and the teaching thing, and Caesar was my teacher here.
Yeah.
And I had kind of a unique thing in that I had been doing records for quite a while before I came to school. It's just the way it happened, but. Caesar had plenty of it, but in reference to students, now who are doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Who are out there doing it, and they'll, from all parts of the industry.
Yeah.
I have a student who ended up working for a large company and started, in tech support, and then was a head of tech support, and now he's in Japan, heading up their, a division or whatever. And then students who, are post-production sound engineers, recording engineers. I have a student, former student who came here. It's kind of a similar thing where he had been recording for a little while, and he teaches now. He teaches this stuff in high school, and it's funny because he came to the audio fair last year, or the year before. His name's Brennan, and in music production, Caesar and I were killing him about a tambourine, right? So it's his track sounded really cool, right? It was kind of like a Jack Johnson kind of drums, bass, guitar, vocal kind of thing, and they put this tambourine in there, and so each class, and you remember how that class goes, right? It's I think it should be on the 1 and the 3, and he just okay, whatever comes back the next 2 weeks later to listen to it. No, just on the 4, and he told, and at the time, and because we had lunch, when he came up for the audio fair, and he's like, man, I was freaking out. He's like, the whole thing, drums, bass, all this stuff, you guys aren't, it all sounded fine. That's why we were like, no problem. But the tambourine was what was going to make it, was going to make the song groove. Anyways, he told me, he's like, I use that story with my students, with his high school students, every single semester.
Every semester.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Tambourine story.
That's what it's about, is finding those little nuggets. It's the funniest little things inside of music that make things memorable, that make it stick out to people. It's finding what's special about a piece of music, and then, really concentrating on that. And anyway, so it's really cool to see students do well. It's the greatest. In anything. People come here, my whole thing is I want people to be upwardly mobile and to be able to come out of here with a better chance at making a living. But as far as being in the music industry and all that stuff, it's the best. When people come back, this is what I'm doing or whatever. See people at the NAMM show, see people, seeing people, former students in studios. And, one of my former students once, and so on, he ran a theater that I used to run, and just had it humming. Yeah. And I used to go watch shows there and see him up in the booth, and working, and I'd be watching this show and just be like, God, it sounds good. Yeah. And he came here to school, and he didn't even own an interface. He didn't know anything. Yeah. And here he is, and he had that theater sounding way better than I ever did. Pretty big theater too. So yeah, I love it. It's one of
the gift that keeps on giving
all the time,
to see people do well.
Yep.
What would you say is a best and worst memory or experience as far as music?
And as an engineer, or as a player, or just anything?
Anything. I like to keep it open.
Well, there's some best, a couple of best things for me. So as an engineer, I was one of the Monterey Jazz Festivals, and those places are just a scene. I remember one, there's just another one where there's, it's all these different venues within this beautiful place. Jazz bands playing everywhere, and I sat in this stadium with nobody in there for Herbie Hancock's sound check, right?
Yeah.
And Brian McCullough, who's a friend of Caesar's, who's Herbie's engineer and is a CSUDH alum. And I'm still, hey, Brian, and I thought, Herbie's playing a guitar with an iPad, and I'm sitting there, I'm the only one in this whole thing because the sound check. Yeah, it's like a private show,
man.
But that night I was working for Yamaha, and like what we would do is we were doing this broadcasting for these crazy player pianos, right? So the band's playing up on stage, and I'm bringing all the signals, mixing that. It's going out to this system, and I'm capturing MIDI, and people are sitting in their living rooms in Russia and Brazil and all over the world, and their player piano is playing, and the band's coming through, right? So I'm doing this show, and it's this guy, Bobby Hutcherson, who's probably the greatest vibes player in history. He was probably in his 90s. This is 2013, 14. He had oxygen. So he goes up on stage, and he had a super long oxygen thing, and his tanks
He's in his 90s playing?
Yeah.
What instrument?
Vibraphone, right?
I don't even know what that is.
So it's the, big, like a giant xylophone.
Oh.
Yeah, he played with Sinatra and like Glenn Miller, people from he's unbelievable.
All right.
And I'm sitting there, and so I'm off on the side of the stage, and it's probably a 500 seat kind of place, and I'm doing my thing, and then mixing, engineers there, and I look out, and like in the second row, I see this lady, and it's Angela Davis, and I'm a great admirer of Angela Davis, and I'm just like, oh my God, that's Angela Davis, man.
Wait a second, Angela Davis?
Davis, the professor and the 70s activist,
What?
Yeah, and so there she is, and I'm like, and then I'm like, I think that's her, right? And there's all kinds of people there, jazz people, Wayne Shorter, and all these jazz people, and so anyways, he did a certain part in the set, I'm like, I'm not sure, and so Bobby says, this one's, and he could barely talk. He's like, this one goes out to Angie, and he had a song from like 71, 72 called Angela.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
And so it was a song to her or whatever. So anyways, I thought it was. Show ends, right, and filtering out, and I'm kind of tearing down my stuff, and she and who I think was a daughter and a friend come up to the side because I'm nobody, right? But I'm doing my, putting my audio stuff, and they think I'm like security or some kind of thing. They're like, oh, do you mind if we see Mr. Hutcherson, and whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, and I walk him around and go back, and I'm all, Mr. Hutcherson, Mrs. Davis, and I'm just like, dude, are you kidding me,
That's
so I mean,
awesome.
like, that's the kind of thing where I can see that, I can see myself walking back behind the stage and walking with her, and I mean, it's been, for years and years, I was a great admirer of her, so like, things like that are unreal. And then as a player, I played a show, there was a guy named Jeff Buckley, and he was just like, he made one album, passed away really young, 20s, and just one of the most pure musicians ever. And his mom owned the right to all his music. And I mean, he was one of those guys where he never got very big, but like you can go look and there's like shots of him with like Paul McCartney. People like, he'd play a show of 500-600 people, and like David Bowie would be there and Paul McCartney, and people were like, just one of those purest, most beautiful voices ever. And so he passed away, and they did his mom owned all his music, and his dad was a great artist too, who passed away. They both drowned in their 20s, kind of crazy.
Wow.
And so the mom owned the rights to all the music, so she put out a DVD of all his stuff. And over in Silver Lake, they did this like small show, like Flea played, and a bunch of other people. And because of the guy, that Joshua Paskowitz guy, he was connected. We were invited to play, so me and him and two other people, acoustic show, like 100 people inside of this Silver Lake place. They did a big viewing of the movie, and then a little small show. And I mean, I loved his music forever. So anyways, front row is his mom, and there's like some other Andy Summers from the Police, and Flea was a couple rows behind, and there's people. And what we did was a lot of people. There was like maybe 8 artists playing, and people were playing Buckley songs, of course, right? And the guy that I was doing it with, Joshua, he knew a lot about him, and so we did songs that influenced him. Like we did a Morrissey song and a Zeppelin song and stuff like that. And like partway through the thing, there's Buckley's mom standing and clapping and crying, like right in the front row, and I'm just like looking at her, like, and it was a tiny little place, and I mean. Man, from a music standpoint, that was probably that was just one of the greatest things ever. And, for engineering, there's all kinds of stuff, but that thing, with Monterey Jazz. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Worst moments, I mean, there's been some...
Where you're just like, I don't want to be here.
You know what's funny?
This is not it.
One of the worst moments I had as an engineer ended up being really cool. And that was, I had this guy, first studio I worked at, and I ended up, I wanted to just, kind of intern there, and the guy gave me a chance, and because he'd got this new hard disk recorder and didn't know how to work it, and I had just gone from tape, and so anyways, it was like a couple nights a week I'd go and I'd record, and I was recording this bluegrass band, and I ended up that I would run the console, and this guy was happy to do it. He was someone I used to record with, and he would just hang out, and so this guitar player came in, he's wasted, right, and there was this song that was like, it was supposed to be, it was called Blue Tango, and they're like, it sounded just like a Santana song. So everyone, the producer and everyone's like, just don't play anything Santana-like, right? So this guy starts playing like Santana, and he's like yelling at me, and he's playing exactly this Santana riff, and he starts calling me Record Boy. So he's like, hey, Record Boy, hey, go back to that spot. Hey, go back to that spot. 1, 2, 3, go. Come on, man. What's up? 1, 2, 3, go. And he kept saying that, and so it was a pretty long night. He's just demeaning me. And just like and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. And so the record was called "Be Careful What You Dream." Beautiful record, and they had a play that went with it and all this stuff. And anyways, it took us a couple years to finish it. And when it finally came out, and CDs were still, this is the early 2000s, so everyone still ran CDs. And we had like a CD kind of listening thing. And I show up, and they're all, hey, Josh, we want you to see, before anyone else sees this here, and they give me the CD, and the title of the CD was 1, 2, 3, go. So Blue Mama was the band. So it was Blue Mama, and they called it 1, 2, 3, go, because that became like the joke,
because
for a while.
He was always saying
because
that
it was the one guy. It was one night, one of the worst experiences of my life as an engineer, and it lasted for hours, and they thought it was so funny, and so that kind of became the running joke. And all these dudes, I was probably in my mid-30s at the time, and all these dudes were in their 60s and 70s, killer bluegrass players. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing. They'd be like, all right, Josh, cool, let's do another take. Hey, 1, 2, 3, go, right? But they ended up calling the record 1, 2, 3, go, and I was just like, oh, this is the best thing ever. So even the worst thing. So, I mean, there's been some stuff that was pretty gnarly, and I've made some bad mistakes and gotten yelled at and all that kind of stuff, but...
That was the worst?
Yeah, that was the worst, and really, it's like, I took anything that happened when I was doing stuff like that as a learning experience. I'm so happy to be there that, there's nothing where I'm like, I'll never do that again. Like, live sound, I'm not a big fan. I did a bunch of live stuff this summer. It was amazing. I had some incredible experiences,
That's nice. That's cool, man. Those are really good stories. And they obviously, just you telling those stories, it's obvious that they still make you, feel you that last one, it wasn't great at the time, but it makes you feel good. It's funny that they named it basically after you,
after my horrible experience. And these dudes who were really bitchin' players. The album's it's a killer album. It's got like 20 songs. I mean, just so much cool stuff on it. Mandolins, banjos. It was an amazing experience. Mm-hmm. And they listed me as a co-producer on the record and all this kind of stuff, and and they gave it that name. I thought that was hysterical. I dug it.
Okay, so what I want to ask you now is, because you're obviously I was younger at the time, but during you coming up in the late 80s, early 90s, you've seen the transition between decades in music. More 80s, maybe more electronic stuff, and I guess earlier maybe I don't know, post-punk. Would you say? Because the 90s started turning into grunge and a different type of rock.
Absolutely.
Stuff. How do you, I'll say how I feel about rock, because obviously now, I feel like the last evolution of rock music, the last significant change was the whole, I guess, early 2004, 2005, or 2000s, the kind of real post-hardcore, the screamo, emo stuff, which I really liked. I really enjoyed some of that stuff, but I really loved the 90s, a lot of the 90s rock. Mm-hmm. It was kind of harder. It was rock. There was no mistaking it. It was, you know what I mean? But now a lot of stuff, a lot of the bands everything's kind of pop. So what is it you think that happened to rock? Where did it go? Because like even rap is still evolving,
right?
And it's kind of taking over the charts and stuff. And whether you think it's rap or mumble rap, whatever. But rock, I have to go back. I have to download albums from the 80s or the 90s or, the early 2000s or whatever to get my fix as far as, rock music. Because there's nothing today I'm hearing that I'm like,
Well, kind of the way that I mean, in a general way, it's what is in the public conscious, right? Yeah. So the reality is, like, right now, for me and, like, bands that I know exist, but that exist under the level of, like, of not even mainstream, like the mainstream, and then there's even like what's in the public consciousness. There are amazing rock and roll bands right now. There's a band called Deer Tick, and they are just, Deer Tick, what a whacked out name, right? But they play. It's just such amazing songwriting, beautiful music. From the hardcore side of things, there's a band called Velartok and Mastodon, and bands that are just as heavy as what was happening during the 80s with Slayer and Metallica. But the difference is, of course, that Metallica would be nominated for a Grammy. Velartok's not going to be nominated for a Grammy. Okay. So, like, that's kind of the way that I see it, is that, yeah, rock and roll, like, in the public consciousness, and especially hard rock and stuff like that, it's basically gone. You know what I mean? There's nothing that is, sort of popular music, is that a part of it that really even resembles what we think of as rock and roll. But I also think that things very much move in cycles. You know what I mean?
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, right? And so, that was profound of me. So, so I mean, will it come back around to where that stuff's popular again? I don't know. But the way I see it is that, for me personally, this is a golden era. And I know some people, and I'm like, for me, late 70s, early 80s, I was 10, 11, 12, and punk rock was the Sex Pistols and the Circle Jerks and the Clash, and like a lot of Corrosion of Conformity and Black Flag, and a lot of that stuff that was the foundation of it, right? And then in the late 80s, early 90s, when the grunge thing and Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains and all that kind of stuff.
Beautiful.
And I saw a lot of those bands in that time, you know what I mean? And was around people like that in LA. And so, and it was cool. I mean, that was great music, but there is just as good, in my opinion, there's quality music like that in the rock genres, in the metal genres. It's just that it's not popular.
You gotta look for it more.
You gotta look for it. Yeah. Absolutely. It's just like, I mean, it's very interesting. I was talking recently. Talking to probably my wife. She's the only one that I talk to anymore. Yeah. So we were talking to.
Me too.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's how it goes. Hey. So about singers and stuff, because we saw the Stars Born recently, right? And Lady Gaga is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Is that the one where she plays with the guy who?
Bradley Cooper.
Cooper.
It's a story that's been told multiple times. It's the fourth incarnation of the movie. Like in the 70s, there was a version that was Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson, Judy Garland. So it's been,
okay.
But it's great, man. It's
looks
amazing.
Great.
And Lady Gaga, biggest thing around, right? But like we started talking about, and for me, and like people that like I love, like female singers, and they have their time, like Erykah Badu, right? You think, she's the greatest thing ever. Where'd she go? Lauryn Hill, where'd she go? Macy Gray. It like went through this. It goes through things. Madonna is the biggest thing in the whole world, right?
Yeah, she was for a minute.
For a minute, but that's what I mean. Is that whatever's in the public consciousness? Does it mean that these people stop making records? Nah, they're still making records. It's just that like the sort of the machine, the entertainment machine chooses what we get to see. In the public consciousness, right? Yeah. And then, but the other stuff is still happening, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just you got to kind of look for it, or people got to bring it to you. I have people bring stuff. There's this new singer who's kind of a Badu style thing, and she's from England, and I think her last name is Smith.
Georgia Smith.
Georgia Smith.
Georgia Smith is.
Oh my God,
she's really good.
Oh.
I was listening to her album. Like I like some of the stuff before her album. Like she did some live sessions at there's like an NPR or something studio up in Washington or something. I forget like live sessions.
Yeah.
Those are crazy.
Yeah, it's like really, a little like bookshelves and stuff.
Yeah, dude. Georgia Smith is super amazing.
Right.
Yeah, I like her stuff. She's good.
Well, and see, that's the thing, right? Who's heard of Georgia Smith? But Erykah Badu was the biggest thing, since sliced bread when she was, for a good reason. Yeah. Right? But that's because whoever was in charge put stuff up there. Probably you and I, we could go walk around school, find 10 other people out of 1,000 that's ever heard of her, and we'd be lucky. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're music people, and we know about her, right? And I barely do. I can think of her first name. I remember, but once you said it, and someone turned me on to that, and I was like, oh, and I listened. Yeah. That's the beauty of like Spotify and that kind of stuff. Oh my God.
Spotify. I just refuse to give them my money, but I think. Well, my wife was already paying for Pandora, but Pandora doesn't let you pick songs, so I'm gonna get rid of our Pandora account and make us get Spotify.
Dude, because I get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got music on Spotify, man. Yeah. Go listen to my music so I can make my 0.000025 cents per play. I need that money.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because with the streaming, like, how are these record companies exactly still? How are they still surviving? Like, because it's weird. I don't know everything. I know they got their 360 deals, which are horrible deals for the artists, so they get 360 degrees of the spectrum of whatever the monetary influx of cash these artists get. And a lot of artists, they sign up for, you're going to get $1 million, but that's just technically like $1 million in debt they're going to end up paying back. They'll front you money, but then they're going to tack on items on an invoice. The music video, travel, the hotel, everything. How are these companies, like, because they used to give artists money, like, I guess in the 90s and stuff, like, go make a record, but now it's like they want to find people usually already established, then sign them and piggyback the stuff that the success they've already had, and then, like, maybe put them at venues that they have connect with or print their...
I don't know, like, I'll say this, like, I don't know a lot, like, about the, I know the basics of a lot of things, but, like, from personal experience, I had, I heard some, some stuff that it's unbelievable how the record companies have treated artists since there's been
forever
record labels, right? And how, like, the record companies are still, see, that's another thing where people talk about, well, you can't make money or whatever. People are making money. I knew a guy, a beautiful singer, and he had a record deal with a pretty large record company out in Nashville. And the guy that I worked for produced one of his records. I worked on maybe 3 or 4 of this guy's records. And so the guy that produced it, a friend of mine, and a guy that I worked for a long time, he was paid about $60,000 to produce the record, right? Okay. And this record label, they paid him $60,000. And they had written into the language, so the record was all done, mixed, ready to go, and he didn't see in small print. He had a lawyer and everything.
The artist?
The producer, my friend, right? So, and the artist was a friend of his, right? Everything's cool here except for the label. The label had put in, if we need to remix this money, you have to reimburse your money plus $25,000. And, it's like written, twisted in the language, right?
So the $60,000 they gave him up front,
plus,
and then plus 25.
He's got to pay back to the labels with no conditions. Like, not if it was beautiful. There was nothing wrong with it, but they just wrote it in because that's a way that they get people. So he got his $60,000, right? And then they turn around and go, you know what? We're going to have it remixed by so-and-so.
And right? This is our cost.
This is our cost. Your 60 back plus 25.
And we'll talk about your money.
And they probably paid somebody $10,000 to actually, like, remix it or something.
But they're saying, it was, it was $85,000.
We had to do it.
Yeah.
And that guy, the artist on that label, he had like a 3 or 4 record deal, and it was so bad for him that he was having to, like, get extra CDs to, like, sell at his shows just to make ends meet. And he ended up like wanting out of the deal so bad he did like a Christmas record and an Easter record and you know what I mean? Oh, so he just like he had a 4-record deal,
just straight pimping himself.
Yeah, just like boom, boom, boom. How do I get these done and get them to them and get out? So I mean, and this was I'm kind of leaving names out just because I wouldn't want to talk about. But I mean, it was that was probably late '90s. So it's been going on, and people could probably tell you a story like that from the '70s, from the '60s, and the '50s. The record companies have always been squeezing people. People have gotten rich, of course, but now, to me, it's a better time than ever because, like the Spotify thing, right? So I don't make a bunch of money, but I've got music on Spotify that I own. I own the publishing. I own the songwriting credit. I own the composer credit for, and it's all There's no record company involved. And now it's not there's no distribution deal, right? And I'm not advertising it in any way. Yeah. But I'm an engineer, I'm a musician, I did the record, I got a new one I'm just finishing. Just had someone come in and do vocals recently, and she just oh my god, she killed it. So good. And and so I'm going to do another one. It won't cost me very much. I pay a little bit to the players, and and I can do it all myself.
Yeah, a lot of it.
That did not exist. You know what I mean? Like, so I'll mix it at my home studio, maybe rent a studio for a little bit of money to finish it, upload the CD, baby, pay the $49 for the digital distribution, and it's all over the world.
In Spotify, you pay them something? Or
no. So when you do like if you do a deal with one of those companies, and you pay for them to give it an ISRC code, an identifier, right, and then they put it out to the world. Basically, they'll give you options. Okay, do you want it to only go out to sites that pay full money? This, you get some options, and they take care of that. Now, there's no marketing or publicity, granted, but it's there. You know what I mean? So I think it's beautiful, and to me, the model is a good one for people like us. For people that are not on the top end of things. And I'm sure you could get someone in here and totally disagree with that and say, "Oh, it's dead. How do I make my money in the in the music business?" I love it, and I've gone through a few periods, and since I've been part of it since the late '80s. I mean, as far as trying to make money playing music. Yeah. And
this is the best time.
This is the best time for me. Like, not making big money, but making money. And being able to, more importantly to me, being able to create art and get it out to as many people as humanly possible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just like we said, I mean, isn't Georgia Smith from like London or something?
Yeah, she's like from the UK.
Yeah, and so it's like, how would we hear her except for somebody word of mouth, and then she's available on YouTube? Exactly, right? So I like it.
No, that's dope. It is it's definitely a different time. Technology and just the mass communication makes it really easy to like get music everywhere, anytime, all the time. Yeah, I guess you're right. I just it's just I guess maybe I don't spend as much time looking for music as I used to, or I don't know if it came because I think I found in the MySpace days, I was able to find a lot of music through MySpace. There was a lot of independent groups, and you could just go listen to their stuff immediately. But I wouldn't even know where to go to look for this. Is maybe forums or something, or maybe seeing local bands and kind of going through there.
I know what you're saying.
Producers,
I know what you're saying.
Stuff like that.
And I think it's sometimes it's word of mouth. And MySpace, and MySpace was a cool thing at the time. I mean, when MySpace was cut, that was when I was first engineering, so I was doing a lot of recordings that ended up on MySpace.
Ended up on MySpace. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what's up, man. To change up the topic, how did you meet your wife, and how did she change your life? Because women, they change your. I guess you decide to make a change sometimes.
No, I mean it's pretty extreme. You know what I mean? I mean, she and I are of a certain type of person. Okay. Let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things, and I mean, people can, you can say things, but I mean, it's like it's almost like we've let we're both a little bit older, right? Mm-hmm. We have grown kids, and but it's almost like we've been waiting around our whole lives to meet each other. Yeah. I mean, we are like children ourselves. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like our kids are embarrassed.
Our parents.
Our separate kids are embarrassed to be around us. And there's a part of it that is pretty extreme, and I mean, in the sense that I've had a lifetime of trouble with drugs and alcohol, okay. Right? And through my wife, and not selling her out in any way, yeah. But it has saved my life, yeah. And we live a certain way. That allows us both to live in a way that we've never lived before. So, we all have stories, and it's wonderful that we do, of how love has changed our life, and, how much our significant other means to us, yeah. And all that kind of stuff. And we have a really extreme version of that. Yeah. That there's a certain amount of that, we did not, in our own individual lives, her living her life up to, the few years that we've known each other, and the time that we've been together, and now the time that we've been married, to where it's not even just the beauty of our lives together, but the fact that we live it. For myself, that I live it sober. You know what I mean? It's a huge deal because I've been able to pull off things, but I've never lived like I have in the last couple of years. Like, honestly, it's pretty amazing. Like, we were talking, we went to Hawaii, and it's like, we just were like cruising, man. We went to Kauai, we went to Maui, we went to Molokai. We're going to Vermont, we're going to all these states. We take trips. I mean, we do stuff like pretty. We're whacked out. Like we love taking pictures of characters, right? Mm-hmm. So if we see like a pineapple walking down the street, we like chase the thing down, and we've done it. I got a picture of a pineapple, and like Teddy Toro, right?
Yeah.
I got like 5 pictures with Teddy Toro. You know what I mean? And I had to have students like I'll be walking over to the small college, and there's Teddy Toro, and I'm like, hey, you can take my phone for me, taking. I mean, I did. It's weird. It's like through my wife. And through what we do together, hi, Lisa, hi. How are you? I love you.
Say hi to the wife.
Yeah.
Hey, Tanisha.
It's a miracle, and we're very, very similar in a lot of the things that we love, and it's funny because some things not right, like some of the things that you might think like are important to be for people to be cohesive and stuff like that. Some of those things were not exactly the same. Yeah. Like music and stuff. Like she knows music and she has her thing, but it's a little different, than what. Although I like all kinds of music, but it's still. But there's certain stuff that we love as far as music, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, how exactly to explain it, but it's been for me, the last couple of years, honestly, it's been a new lease on life, and I've had it, not like I've had, it's been, a nightmare or something like that, but, I've really been freed up a lot. I mean, like, growing up was a trip, and, I kind of went, I never really grew up. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Yeah. It's like I'm 12 again. Yeah. Like, like we talked about, we started off with 12.
Yeah.
And, and you kind of have, you make a choice there. And I made a choice to suspend my growth, and now all of a sudden I'm getting to be 12 again. And it's pretty cool, Yeah. And a lot of that is through my wife, and is through how we live. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because I kind of understand some of the stuff you're saying, because like I feel like for a long time, especially getting out of the military, I just like at least a good 10 years I was just kind of raging, just doing whatever I wanted all the time, drinking, partying, stuff. And at some point it finally started to get where I was just like, God, I got to do something different. I can't do this. It's not giving me the same thing. And wasn't, and then when I was starting to progressing towards the change, my wife, and she put up a lot of stuff before we got married, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. She was still there, and just kind of, I don't know, she made me kind of want to be a better, I guess, man.
Oh, yeah.
And then I kind of stepped up eventually over time and still continue to, I feel like step up, especially we got a kid now. And it's just, it's been a journey, and it's, when you are sober, you can just do more stuff. You know what I mean? When you're not like getting jacked up all the time, you can do more stuff like all day.
It's one of those things, right? Where like if some people, that's how they they live through. They drink a little bit and they have a great time. And they're able to go to these things,
yeah.
and that's wonderful, But then there's some of us who you end up locked in a closet. You know what I mean? And now for me it's like doing things that like we did the coolest thing during the summer. We did like a space weekend, right? So we got to go to JPL, did a full tour of JPL, and we know someone that's there. Then the next day we went to the Science Center, went and saw Endeavor, and then the King Tut. I mean, like just stuff that kind of I think people would look at and go, that doesn't sound like very much fun. But it's just like, it was the greatest thing ever. We got a hotel in Pasadena, and I mean, and it's like, if I was, not sober, I would never do something like that.
So, like, two things. How, like, because, like I said before, let me just get that camera. I remember seeing, like, another semester that I saw you had a chip, like a sobriety chip. How many years have you?
It's coming up on 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was, it was, was pretty much for me, and then, it's not to go too far, but I actually had pretty extended periods because I was, I was not good. Yeah. And so, I had, and those periods were the best ever. Like, I never got past the 10th grade. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm your college professor that never got past the 10th grade, right? Yeah. And so, but then I would have these periods where I didn't do those, didn't do the things that were so detrimental to me, and I would have huge growth spurts. And then back way up, you know what I mean? And so a few years ago, I was at the bottom of one of those back and way ups, and it just like, I mean, really, really backed way up, and decided to like take it seriously and do the process. You know what I mean? Yes. So I did the process and met my wife during that time, and somewhere in there like had a little bit of trouble and drank and stuff again and for a few weeks, and then pulled it back together. Now it's been almost 2 years. I mean, okay. So let's see. So it's today 24. A year and 8 months, I think, in a couple days. So yeah. I mean, it's cool, and and that's the thing. For me personally, and thank you very much.
I mean, it's a big deal. We actually, I interviewed one of our other students, Brian, and he approached me like last semester because he was having issues. Like he was just partying a lot, drinking a lot, just doing stuff, and it was affecting his grades and the kind of relationship with his family. And I guess he had heard me talking about how wild I used to be because I'm really calm now. But I mean, I even ran around calling myself, I had a business card, Wildest Negro in OC. Oh, like, man. I was like, I made it.
Who are you handing that out to?
Everybody. Everybody. I'm talking everybody everywhere. And it was so wild and lavish and retarded business. They just wouldn't forget. Yeah. So when I was like around and I wasn't like too drunk, people would be like, hey, WNIOC. Yeah. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. And he'd heard me talking about like kind of the change I made and stuff and how I used to party. And he's like, I guess he's like, hey, man, I should talk to Aaron. And so he talked to me and I told him, I was like, yeah, man, I mean, if you're ready, it'll be a great change for you if you're ready for that. Yeah. But, it's a challenge, and I just kind of, just tried to talk to him and let him just kind of vent, and just told me all kind of stuff, like got in a car accident and just, just messing up in school and lying to his mom and his relationship with his brother and stuff. And he was just really disappointed in himself, knew he could do better, and he just really saw it was time to make a change. And so, like, we kind of, like, I catch up with him every other month and just like, you still, he's like, yeah, man, it's good, thanks. And I remember I gave him one of those essential oil rollers,
and
then like peace, like just something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he's feeling itchy or something, just get the little incense and just smell it, and it'll help because it's I mean, There's a thing that happens, and again, it's not I have no there's no bitterness or jealousy or like looking at how people party and this and that. No, I know that for me, I do not function as a normal person if that's the case. You know what I mean? And that's fun, and that's cool. You know, and so I just thank God that I was able to understand that to the point that it's like, okay, cool, and then it's like you're saying, then a whole new world opens up to you. If that's who you are, and that's a problem because you're holding back a huge part of yourself. Your best self.
Your best self.
You're potentially your best self. You're holding back because man, it's just like it's weird. I thought that was something I just was gonna do to for however long. Like when I got in the military, I just was like I didn't know what to do with myself, so I was just like just a lot of drinking, a lot of partying for a long time until like I just morphed like this character WNIC. I just made up. I just left work one day. I was like I'm not going back to that job. I don't have another job. I don't even really have that much money, but I'm just gonna figure it out. And I'm just gonna be that guy, and I was that guy for a while. So like but now I'm just like I'm pretty super. Just like kind of calm and whatever, and I still got like tons of energy. But it's like I focused a different place. I focused in school. My wife, got the kid now. Just reading stuff, and like you get to go do all this cool ass stuff. You found the love of your life, you married her, and now you get to go on these cool freaking adventures with your best friend. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's cool, man. And you get to do more with your life and your day every day. Every day.
And
you can do what you love. You do the audio engineering, and
I've never looked at it and been so grateful on a daily basis. And again, like I said, coming doing this for a living, being at school and getting to be around talented people and watching all this stuff we've talked, watching students succeed, and the fact that for me it's like oh gosh, I got to bring a handful of guitars to school today because for production class, I'm going to need to play. I mean, that's like a burden, you know what I mean?
Shucks.
Oh, shucks. What a terrible day. I got to take a bunch of guitars to work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and again, I spent a lot of time, probably 10, 12 years making records too, and that was incredible. And, but I don't think, I definitely didn't appreciate it like I appreciate things now that, and I appreciate's not even a strong enough word. It's just, I place a value on life and in the gift of life every day. Yeah. Now that, I never really understood, but I thank God, it's, and again, there's no like, oh darn, why didn't, no, life is life is what it was and is, and it's beautiful, so yeah, I'm really grateful to be, to have been through everything that I've been through and to be where I am now and to be here and do stuff like this and I dig it,
Yeah, and I think all the students are thankful for you to be here too. Learn, me too, learning stuff from you. Slade might not be so thankful you threw the Nerf ball up on top of the building.
Well, and I hope that I hope stuff like that. I'll be.
Those are good memories, though, man.
Those are good memories, and there's a balance for me because, I think that because again, it's just my situation, that I didn't graduate from high school. It took me 18 years to get through junior college. I didn't graduate college, from here until
I had a doctorate at Orange Coast College.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And the Saddleback I started in like 89 and I graduated in 90, 98 or so. I don't even know, probably in the 2000s actually. Yeah. And but you know what? And I did it and because I worked really hard and was pretty good at what I did, ended up teaching. You know, I mean, what the heck? You know,
you got it. You got a lot of experience to teach.
That's where I yeah, right.
I
spent a lot of time in college, the last 30 years. You know. And then kept going and got my master's degree. And there's been people along the way that were so instrumental in that. I know you never met him, but Professor David Bradfield, he was incredible. For Caesar as well. Yeah. I mean, he was everything to Caesar, and Caesar was a big deal to me too. And Caesar's the reason I'm here.
He did mention that we have another professor here, Caesar Bahia, that I interviewed earlier, and he said that he got in here. And I forget exactly how he said he came over there. He just told me, I should know, but he said like he was looking they needed somebody to take some classes, and he ended up, he said he did call Marco first, but Marco couldn't, with his schedule, he was doing something where he had to be there in a day, I think another teaching thing, and he's like, let me call Josh, and he called Mr. McKendry over here, and then that's how you got in. He got in. He said it's a job. It's an industry of friends. He said the music industry and stuff. And so if you get up, you bring your friend up, and
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a true gift. And Professor Bradfield, he was a big deal to me. One of the most intense classes, and even now, having finished my master's degree, and I did some pretty crazy stuff.
Is he retired now?
He's retired, but he still works for the union, and so he's still part of the California Teachers.
I think that's the one he mentioned. I think Caesar mentioned him.
He was really important. See, this program exists because of him. Oh, you know what I mean? This is, he was here for 35 years.
Why don't we have like a plaque for this guy, or like a statue?
We probably should. And I mean, he's just such a pure guy. And the hardest class I ever had, like probably ever, was advanced musicianship. Man, it was just like crazy. And I was like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And he's like, he really convinced me, and he worked hard. And the synthesis class, which.
He's the guy who created.
That was his, in a lot of those classes, and that was his class. And at a certain point, and I started teaching here more and more over the years after Caesar brought me in the beginning, and he went to the people that matter and said, "Hey, I'd like to teach half of it and give half of the students to Josh." And they said, "Okay," for the beginning synth, and so we did that for a couple of years, and then he retired. And it's not like he hasn't necessarily could say, but he's like, I would love for, as this moves forward, that Josh take over in the advanced synth and be the music, so he's just been a huge part of, absolutely it works like that. And I mentioned before, a guy named Juan Sansone, who I was working at theater, and, I was working hard. I was working here in the day and running a theater and sound, and theater is crazy, man. Yeah. I've never been part of anything. I was there about a year and a half, and 6 days a week. 2 shows on Thursday, Sunday. I mean, it's insane stuff. And I mean, you talk about personalities.
Big personalities?
Oh, dude. I almost killed Val Kilmer, man. I mean, that guy, he was killing me, man.
What happened with Val Kilmer?
Oh, man. He was... So, he played this thing where he played Mark Twain, right? Okay. It's called Citizen Twain. So he'd get all done up in this Mark Twain makeup.
Yeah.
And so so in the theater, generally they're wearing lavalier mics somewhere. And so his mic, this costume guy, he had it running up through his hair, and it was coming out the front of his wig, right? So it's coming like right here. And it was dangling. You couldn't really see it, you know what I mean? And it was a one-man show.
Like an anglerfish?
Yeah, like a little angler, like whatever those fish are, right?
Yeah.
And so the first night, everything went fine. And, a lot of that running his show was running a thing called Q-Lab. So it's kind of crazy because you got a stage manager in one ear, and they're like, okay, this is Q2, audio Q2, go, boom. And you're hitting keyboards, and you're doing the audio at the same time, right? So the next night, his makeup guy comes back to me and says, hey, just so you know, Val had me push that microphone back further in his hair. And I'm like, oh, dude.
How are we going to hear?
Well, no, that wasn't what I was worried about. What I was worried about happened. So I went back and I said, really? He's like, well, yeah, because you can see it, and whatever. So halfway through the show, 400 and whatever people that place holds, and all of a sudden, do the whole sound system, right? And I'm like, oh, no. All this noise and all this stuff, and people are looking around in the audio booth.
Who do we blame?
That guy, right? And then he comments about it. It sounds like there's rats up there, but in this Mark Twain thing. And then he's looking up at me, and what it was, of course, was that he started to sweat, and so the mic slid. It would always slide, so we had to start with it further up. And so the hair was tickling the front of the diaphragm. It was crackle, 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 and then it slipped up into his hair and was just like a mess, right?
Yeah.
So after the show, I go back to, what happened? And I said, what do you mean, what happened? I told you that was going to happen. He's like, I want you here tomorrow at 10 a.m. And so I talked to my boss there, and I said, hey, he wants me here at 10. And he said, okay, just come at 10. Next day, 10, 11, 12, 6 p.m., right before the show, he shows up, did you fix it? I said, well, what another fix? And it was just like, oh my God. I was, one of those things. It was funny. But anyways, the theater is crazy. Yeah. And I mean, some of the most intense, but really it's pretty cool because it turns into family. You're around these people all the time. And I mean, you do a tech week where you're there, 14, 15, 16, 17 hours a day for a week. And then you'll do 50 shows in a month and a half. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, it's rad stuff. And so that gig, when I was kind of rounding it out, Juan Sansone, who was a graduate of mine, and he called me. He said, "Josh, I've been interning at all these studios. I can't find whatever." And I said, "Hey, come shadow me at this theater. You interested?" Yeah. So he would come and he would hang out in the booth with me, and then after a while, I'd be like, okay, cool, this is how you do it. And he was kind of taking over, and he'd run the shows, and they didn't really know, right? And so I was like, I'm out of here. I'd had enough, and they're like, oh, well, no, whatever. And so, anyways, they said, we got to hire somebody. I said, hey, I highly recommend. You see Juan hanging around. He could do this. He's been running it. He took over, and like I was saying earlier, he had that place humming. He worked like 3 years. He's a personal engineer now for a guy named Lee Rocker, who's a band called the Stray Cats. Yeah. And he's parlayed that into
like other gigs and successes.
And so absolutely, it's and it happened because I knew how he worked. I had him in school. I knew what he was about, and so it's a big deal. And that's like Caesar said, he's absolutely right. It's a very small community. Yeah. And how people cross over. So
interesting. Yeah. Well, if you, is there, I always like to ask people like what their dream is. And I asked Caesar the same question, but with people like yourselves, it almost feels like you guys are living your kind of dream life essentially. Like, is there anything else you would rather be doing than what you're doing right now? Like, sky's the limit. Like, well,
like for me personally, when it comes to the music stuff and the audio stuff, teaching and everything, my favorite thing to do is the music for film. And I say that as somebody who's never done a budget release film, but I've done scores for independents and done re-record mix on full-length films. And so the re-record mix, this the final mix, right? You got all the assets, and you're the one that puts it all together. That is my favorite stuff in the world. So if I had an opportunity to do, I do scores and stuff for people for free, And I did, I was doing. There's a guy named Wendell Escott who graduated from here TV a couple years ago, and he's a YouTube comedian, and he's too much, man. Yeah. And 2 summers ago, he was having me at $50 a pop. I was doing songs for him, because he would do a video and he would use a Willie Nelson song, right? And so he showed me a video and $50. Yeah, man. And I would do sound-alikes for And I did I did some crazy ones. I did the. What's the one from Coming to America?
Coming to America.
But it's the movie with Eddie Murphy and but I can't think.
Oh, Arsenio Hall.
In Arsenio Hall, but what's the gel? Soul Glow.
Soul Glow.
So I did the killerest lift of Soul Glow.
Oh man, I wouldn't mind hearing that or getting the file for that one.
It's on YouTube. And so anyways, like like $50 a song. It was barely enough, but I love that stuff so much. I would just, I would make those songs. People would charge, pretty good money to redo the way that I was redoing those songs. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I love that stuff. Sound for picture, specifically music and score, and then that mix phase of it, that would, if I could do more of that, make pretty good money at that. And you can do that in, at home in your pajamas and bunny slippers. You know what I mean?
That's not bad. Work from home.
Yeah, with coffee and so I dig that stuff. And so I mean, like dream scenario, world peace, right? But aside from that, doing what I do, it's the greatest thing ever. But in the audio world, definitely doing scores, doing music for picture to me is just one of the best things ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see, to kind of close out, like, what would you like? Are there any like tips you would want to give new audio engineers or anybody entering into, maybe like some of the new students?
Well, as you know, I live that every day, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and
to be successul for them.
And so it's like it's what I do for a living, and to me, like the most important thing that you can have for this, and you could have somebody who teaches painting or anything, sitting here saying the same thing. You have to absolutely love it. You know what I mean? Because the reality is that there's not that many jobs out there. If you and this is a little bit trite, but
yeah,
if you go into the business program and you get an accounting degree, when you graduate, there might be 5 accounting firms kind of going, hey, well, we'll give you the company car, and you'll get this. And when you graduate with an audio engineering degree, there are not studios saying that, hey, we'll give you the company car.
Yeah.
So you gotta love it. You know what I mean? And as well. I mean, I just had my lab class downstairs, a 4-hour class in the lab, and I mean, you gotta have a desire to just be, like sending. Oh, let's see if I can get the signal over there. Let's see if I can do this. You actually absolutely have to love it. And the lab classes, I teach till 6:30 or whatever, right? Sometimes 7:30, 8 o'clock, I'm still sitting there. Yeah. And there's always been that. And students, what's up? Oh, well, there's nowhere else I'd rather be, Yeah. Except for being home. Like I said, home with my wife. I mean, like I love being here. Yeah. And I mean, and so an absolute love for it. The other is absolutely is like truth. You know what I mean? Like always being on, and these are universal things. Yes. But like, as Caesar said, it's a small community. You know what I mean? And being good to people and being honest with people. Like you hear funny stories about people doing stuff with the thing I share with my students a lot is I had we'll bust out microphones, right? Like the MD421, a lot of people put it flat like this, right? When it's pointed like this, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and it's like it's cool, just fix it, right? Yeah. And I share with students all the time that I got a microphone, working in a big studio, got the microphone, they're like, "Set it up, do this like that," and they go to check it later, listen, that thing sounds awful. Oh, no. I went and I looked, and I had the microphone facing the wrong direction. You know what I mean? So it's really easy to just put it facing the right direction and just sit there and go like this. But no, the right thing to do was to walk in, tell the producer, hey, I had the microphone facing the wrong direction. And why would you do that? Well, that producer continued to hire me for years because I didn't lie, and he knew that the stuff from earlier was no good. So, passion and truth and love for what you do, and then there's all kinds of little parts of this business that are a big deal. You gotta love music. Yeah. I mean, you gotta love music, and love being part of the deal, because it's not easy. It's not a big money thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? It is just not a big money thing. There are some people that make big money at it, but when you talk about it from a percentage standpoint, it's not great. So I would say just an absolute love and passion for being around it, and truth and honesty and love for it is probably, the biggest deal, I think.
Thanks. I think that's a lot of good advice for people getting into the music industry. You better love it.
Yeah, you better love it. That's right.
So I think we're going to close it up.
Cool.
So
thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm happy to, and it's killer to see that you're doing it. I love to see that you're doing it. I remember when you first got here and you were like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
What do I do?
You suggested that I do it at the in KDHR at the campus radio station. I started doing it there, but now I'm trying to get like mobile and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I enjoy it, and I like to talk with people. So,
I hope 10 years from now I'm coming into your show on freaking, CNN or something like
anywhere,
that. Right?
I don't care. I'll talk wherever, man.
And interviewing on that show. So I'm happy. I'm more than happy to do it. It's my pleasure.
Thanks, man. I think people definitely get a lot of positive notes from here, a lot of experience and knowledge that maybe could help them in their own life, and whatever they're trying to do. So that's episode 22, Black Aaron Broadcast. Josh McKendry, Professor Josh McKendry, awesome guy, teacher, musician, husband, father, just a dope dude in general. So stay blessed, don't stress. Black Aaron Broadcast every week, Thursday, 10 a.m. I don't know, whenever I post this episode. Later. Bye-bye.
It's the Black Aaron Broadcast. It's the Black Aaron Podcast.